across the bridge. That land would have been part of the town of New Echota also. There were a couple big farms that were on the higher bluff over there near it's called the Oostanala River, and the river was the northern boundary of the town. The 1835 property surveys evaluations show that from the river down through New Echota, it would have been about 3 dozen, a little more buildings making up the town in entirety. They had 3 public buildings as we kind of address them today, and that would have been the council house, the print shop where the Cherokee Phoenix was being printed, and then the Supreme Court house for the Supreme Court operations for the Cherokee Nation. Everything else would have been, his house, his cabin, his barn, his corn crib, her ferry building over there on the river, because she owned the ferry over there, made some money. She had a store. There were a couple of stores through town here. So it would have been mainly people's houses and the support buildings that made up the type of housing. And the little farmstead you're sleeping around over there today is very typical of what we would call an upper middle class farmstead. When you look at the 1835 surveys, we have records for thousands of buildings that the Cherokees owned. And they had a couple brick buildings like you just saw, Van's house, the Donald Trump of the Cherokee. And then you had middle class, upper middle class farmstead like you're going to sleep around over there. Very nice construction. What they had here was very typical of what you would have found down in Georgia, out of the Cherokee Nation, up in the Tennessee area. The lifestyle that a lot of these people had adopted was very much kind of accepted of the European American culture as far as the material possessions. A lot of the houses here were upper middle class. These people, a lot of them were the Cherokee who had gone to school, they were educated, so they were running the newspaper, they had the ferry, they had the stores, and so they were economically, the upper middle class. And you'll see another example on the walk of a typical farmstead that they had. When you look at those thousands of buildings, most of the cabins folks were living in, they're about a 16 by 12 foot hewn timber cabin, 1 door, no windows, and then you'll see the support buildings like the corn crib and the smokehouse, and also the chicken. And y'all seen examples of those out in Oklahoma. There's a lot of historic cabins. That's why I kind of breeze past that. And y'all can look at it when you get back if you want to. Main buildings that we would like you to see are the public buildings. This is where the Constitution the Cherokee wrote in 1827 started. The Cherokee government that y'all have today, with your chief, your council, the 3 branches, the executive, judicial, and the legislative, all started right here. Before New Echota was a centralized government headquarters, the capital, they never had an official elected chief. During the colonial time period, they may have recognized this guy as the chief or the leader, the headman of the Cherokee Nation, because he was willing to deal with the colonies. If he wasn't going to trade with us and deal with us, well, he wasn't really elected chief anyway, so we'll elect her, or we'll elect him, or we'll choose to deal with them, should I say. And quite often that meant somebody was being bribed, unfortunately. Land was being sold, and when they moved here and set up their capital, their motto was not 1 foot more. They didn't want to give up any more land. They realized how much they had been given up over the years, and so they were trying to show the surrounding states, Tennessee, North Carolina, Alabama, and especially Georgia, that they were doing what they've been told for several administrations, to adopt this civilized, as they call it, lifestyle, set up a lifestyle that would be more conducive to the people around them that weren't Cherokee. Maybe people would get along better and they could stay on this land. And they were doing that and doing it very well. This building you're looking at is one of the reconstructions. It's the council house that was here in New Echota. This one was actually built back in 1995, so it's not an original structure, but we know from the records from 1835, it's a 19 by 31 foot timber building, 8 windows, 2-story. We know the flooring in it, we know the windows, it's a brick fireplace and chimney inside of it. So when the reconstruction was done, it was based on those original records. And as you'll see, the rest of the town is set up the same way. A combination of archaeological work that was done that found a lot of remains. The people that lived here, it wasn't during the forced removal. These people packed up and left long before the forced trail of tears, as we call it, happened in 1838. Most of the people in New Echota, by 1836, had packed up and moved west. They were gone. And so they weren't leaving a lot of stuff behind, but things during the years they had lived here had been deposited into trash pits or fire pits or whatever. And a lot of that is what archaeologists found, and it gives a real good view of a lot of the ceramics, some of the glassware that was being used here. So using an archaeological record, a historical record that people have dug up, doing genealogy work, which Jack's so good at, historical research, folks like Jeff Bishop from Trail of Tears has done an immense amount of work, mapping of the roads. They used a lot of those combination of things to show people today what it would have been like. But we're going to take a walk over here and go inside the council house and let y'all take a look inside of it. All right, test question number 1. What's my name?
Gomez. Hey, Keaton. Now how are you looking at that cute picture on my phone? It's not anywhere in my database.
Did you take a look?
No, I really don't think so. I was like really heavy in my pockets and they showed that. I looked. I mean, it's not my suitcase.
Y'all are sitting in like this. We won't be in here long. There's a lot to see here. You can see all the buildings. And to go through all of them takes really a good hour and a half. Time period is already only 8:15 now. So I know y'all got a lot of stuff you kind of want to mess with and get organized before y'all take off tomorrow. We'll move kind of fast between the buildings. If you take a look inside here, this is basically where the Congress of the Cherokee Nation is meeting. They had two groups instead of our House and Senate, as we call it today. The Cherokee Constitution, 1827, had a representative government also. And there were 8 districts. Some of y'all are looking at the map on that sign right outside the door there. Each district had 5 representatives. So you had 40 council members coming to New Echota. October was when the council meetings were being held, and it was in addition to, of course, a time of politics being taken care of. I mean, it was also a time of fellowship. So Cherokee were coming from all over the Cherokee Nation. They all just came from up to North Carolina. Of course, it extended into eastern Tennessee, and just a little bit of the corner of Alabama was Cherokee Nation land. But a big chunk, the majority of the land mass and the population was in Georgia's, what Georgia considered her boundaries. Cherokee, of course, had been here first, and Georgia was saying it was partially their land. And so even though the other counties and the other states surrounding the Cherokees were also trying to persuade them to move west, it was really Georgia that was the driving force, tightening the screws, as we say, trying to get them to move west. And unfortunately, it didn't end up happening. You see here the executive branch. Some of y'all know these folks. John Ross in the middle was the principal chief, elected in 1827. His left right-hand man, George Lowry, was the vice chief. Basically, just like our executive branch set up, he was the vice president of the Cherokee Nation. So he was the vice chief. And then Major Ridge, who was the Speaker of the Council. So he was similar to our Speaker of the House of Representatives for their council meetings when they came here. They would have had part of the group meeting downstairs, part of it met upstairs in the building like you're sitting in, and just like our bills have to pass both houses and have to be signed by the president to become law, or the governor if you're working on the state level, John Ross had to sign them to make them law for the Cherokee Nation. He had a veto power. If he didn't want to pass a bill, he could veto it. And as council members, y'all could override his veto with 3/5 of you decided you wanted to make it law despite his objections. He would have been meeting in a building just like you see here. And you can kind of tell why they don't want to meet in October. It gets a little steamy here just like it does for y'all back home in Oklahoma.